everyone, it's your boy Luke here for our DFS core picks at this week's WGC Dell Match Play. It's Match Play week, a unique week for sure with a lot of strategy to discuss, and we sure as heck will during this video, but we're going to be covering my top 6 core picks for this week's event. One in each price range to give you an idea of some of the plays that I'll be building around, of course, so you can go ahead and make your own lineups. Last week at the Valspar was a lot of fun. I was there in person, was able to sweat out that playoff in person when Sam turned over to his caddy and said, "Let's effing go." To put an abbreviation to it, I was standing right there. I was able to see that in person. It was really cool. Really looking forward to this week though, because it is so unique. It's not a stroke play event. We do get to see these guys go out there and play, in my opinion, the most pure form of golf, which is match play, just playing against your partner. Don't have to really take score other than how many holes you're up or how many holes they end up. So definitely a lot to talk about there. On the Valspar Championship, it was a hit or miss week. A lot of our core picks ended up kind of having middling performances, but our leverage plays ended up coming through massively, whether it was Sam Burns, who ended up being much lower owned than this week than he should be, or somebody like Davis Riley, who I was well over the field on, actually 4 or 5x the field, and ended up almost taking down the whole tournament. In general, I was a Justin Thomas short of taking home tournaments. My highest scoring lineup was 583 points, and a swap from Hovland to JT, and I had enough salary in that high scoring lineup, would have actually taken down the tournament, the GPP, for 50 grand. So it doesn't always feel the best. Feels good to know that you're close though. I was still able to profit on the week despite not having a chalky Justin Thomas up top, and really looking forward to taking something down soon. We've been clicking on all cylinders here on the last 3 to 4 weeks for sure. Most of our guys have been making the cut. We've had 6 of 6 percentages, like 2 to 3x the field for the last month or so. So I can smell a big win coming soon. With that being said, let's go ahead and hop right into this video covering my top 6 plays here for the DFS slate. Alright guys, on the screen you can see our projections for this week, and as always, if you want direct access to these, make sure you check out my Patreon page. Just $8 for the month gets you all the access for all the golf tournaments that month. Let's go ahead and check out the key stats for analysis before we hop into the plays. And the first key stat I'm looking at is shots gained putting. When it comes to match play, specifically Austin Country Club, it has some really difficult to read greens. Also, some of the faster greens that we get this time of year, you're gonna have to make sure your guys can get it done there. So whether it's shots gained total, where I have 18 on my 35 weights, or shots gained putting on the hybrid surface, that is the Bermuda POA Trivalous surface that you find at PGA West over there for the stadium course, TPC Sawgrass, PGA National, also what we had last week at the Valspar Championship, all the same overseed situation that we're dealing with this week. So I've pulled shots gained metrics from all of those events, of course shots gained putting total, and lastly just your typical shots gained putting on Bermuda, because even with all the overseed, you still have a grain on the surface, which definitely helps some of the players with their reads. Let's go over to shots gained approach. It's my number 2 key stat with 30 of the weights. I have 7 on the 50 to 125 range. You're gonna see plenty of shots there with your wedges. The 125 to 150 is the most prominent range at Austin Country Club, so I have 10 weights on it. The 150 to 175 and 200 plus yard range aren't nearly as influential, but definitely still parts of the model. Third, we have match play record, driving accuracy, shots gained around the green, and lastly, driving distance. All of those are less important stats in the player pool, but still things that I'm considering, especially those driving stats. You can see 17% of my weighting on them collectively. A little bit more emphasis on accuracy, just because it is a relatively short golf course. There's also quite a few holes where if you miss left and right, you can be in quite a bit of trouble, but you're only going to be losing one hole at a time, right? So that's why it's not the hugest deal if you have that type of thing happen to you, but you do want to keep it in play more often than not. Let's head over to the players that we'll be targeting for this week, and up top, our first core pick is going to be Patrick Cantlay. He's going to be our stud option. He's at $10,200, so actually a little bit cheaper than most of our stud options here on the channel, but it has a decent match play record. You can see 5-3-1 to this point of his PGA Tour career. He's in group number 4, which also happens to be one of the weaker groups here, so I'll go ahead and sort this by group. We'll go ahead and check it out here. See, it's Patrick Cantlay, Sungjae Im, Keith Mitchell, and Seamus Power. While they're all decent players, none of them have any match play prowess, right? 1 and 2 for Sungjae, 1 and 2 for Keith Mitchell, 0 and 0 for Seamus Power. So none of them are known as match play stalwarts. They all they're pretty similar players, right? Like, especially Sungjae Im, him and Patrick Cantlay are very similar, except that Sungjae Im's the Walmart version of Patrick Cantlay, right? Patrick Cantlay outshines him in pretty much every shots gained category. He's just head and shoulders better player. Of course, also has the match play prowess. Keith Mitchell has very similar numbers to Patrick Cantlay off the tee, also with the putter, but he outshines him hugely with the irons. That's Patrick Cantlay who outshines him. So even though these guys have assets that I like, Patrick Cantlay can do that plus more with the other categories. So somebody that I have winning this group 32.6% of the time, which isn't the highest of anybody on the slate, but at the same time, it's more than adequate for this field. He also has the personality I'm looking for. And, we can look at all these stats as much as we want. It's usually something that I do a lot of here on the channel. You guys know I'm a stickler for the numbers. But at the match play, it's a little bit of a different beast. You got to be able to take narrative into play. There's certainly guys that are just good at the format. I mean, look at a Kevin Kisner. The guy's insane in this format. And spoiler alert, he's in our player pool. He's going to be our value pick this week. But guys like Patrick Cantlay, he's early in his career, right? He doesn't have the massive sample size. But to this point, 5-3-1. And at the Ryder Cup, him and DJ were an absolute force. When it was Patrick Cantlay and also Xander Schauffele playing, they were an absolute force. The one common denominator is when Patrick Cantlay played, he brought his match home. The guy was absolutely putting the lights out. Of course, the iron play and off the tee play is world class for Patrick Cantlay as well. So if he can ratchet up that intensity, I mean, we saw it at the Ryder Cup. The guy also started to feel himself out there, really started to get animated and whatnot. I think he's not only going to have a big week this week, but also for all the international competitions to come. It looks like he enjoyed himself out there. I'm sure he'll want to be a part of that type of team. Next up, we have Xander Schauffele. So let's go ahead and organize this by group again to give you an idea of who he'll be playing against. So he's over here in Group 7, somebody that'll be playing with Tony Finau, Lucas Herbert, and Takumi Kanaya. And of course, Herbert and Kanaya, well, they aren't completely write-offs, right? I have a 14.3% and a 9.9% win rate for both of them, respectively. Tony Finau and Xander Schauffele are going to win this more than half the time, probably at least 2/3 of the time, like I have it here in my projections. Xander Schauffele is somebody who has the highest win rate of anybody on the slate. So if we go ahead and sort this here by win rates, you can see that he is the highest of anyone on the slate. So 49.2%, Jon Rahm's at 40.8%. Taylor Gooch, who we'll talk about here a little bit later, is a 38.1% rate. In fact, most of the plays here I have as core plays are guys that are towards the top of my win rate metric. And it's not the best players in the field. I mean, for Jon Rahm, that's certainly the case. I mean, Xander Schauffele, of course, he's a top 10 player in the world, or top 15, I guess, at this point, given all the moving over the last month or so. But guys like Taylor Gooch, again, they're not top 10 players in the world. Guys like Kevin Kisner or even Sergio Garcia aren't top 10 players in the world, but look at their match play records. So again, we're going to talk about all of them here in a second, but Xander Schauffele, by far the highest of anyone on that list there. And a lot of it comes down to the people in his group. Like I said before, when you have Lucas Herbert, Takumi Kanaya to compete with, rather than somebody like Scottie Scheffler or Justin Thomas, of course you're going to have a higher chance to win. To this point of his career, he's 4-4-1, so it's not like he's been outstanding in that category, but he played with Patrick Cantlay. They got the job done more often than not over there at the Ryder Cup, and I'm expecting that record to just get better year after year. So he's got a complete game. He gains across all 4 major statistical categories, so let's go ahead and take a look at that here. For Xander Schauffele, he's gaining 0.4 shots gained per round off the tee, 0.4, almost 0.45 shots gained off the tee per round on approach. Around the greens there, slight gainer there. And the putter, even though it hasn't been quite as good as what we've seen over the last few years, he's at least still gaining in that category. So Xander Schauffele, I think he's getting a little bit of a knack because he doesn't have that breakthrough win, but if he goes out there and he ends up finishing in the top 4 this week, doesn't end up actually taking home the trophy, that's still going to be enough for us in DFS purposes. So somebody I'm definitely willing to invest in as well. All right, next up, let's move on to our bread and butter play, who is going to be Sergio Garcia at $8,300. This is a guy who's pretty much a match play hero. I mean, whether it's the Ryder Cup here at the WGC, that guy wins all his matches. He's 12-7-1 here at the WGC. He's in Group 2, which also happens to be one of the weaker groups in this field. So if there's a situation for Sergio to go out here and have a really solid week, it's in a group with Colin Morikawa, who's 0-3-0 for his career. In the Ryder Cup, he didn't look all that good. Kind of got carried by Dustin Johnson for the most part. Jason Kokrak's 1-2-0 for his career, and Robert McIntyre 1-3-0. So neither one has really put up that great of a performance. Jason Kokrak didn't look that good out there last week. Robert McIntyre hasn't done anything in America since last year's match play, to be quite honest with you. So Sergio Garcia at $8,300, coming in with the best form of any of these players. Take a look at the last 24 measured rounds. Well, it's not going to be all that amazing for somebody like a Sergio. I mean, look at the approach play. He's actually losing to the field. Still a significant gainer off the tee. The around the green play is never going to be a huge strong suit for Sergio Garcia. But look at these putting numbers. He's getting 0.4 shots gained per round. And of course, this is a small sample size, so we can't really hold him to those numbers completely. But if he's going to go out there, continue to gain strokes putting, at this golf course specifically, he's been really solid with the putter in the past. We don't actually have shots gained numbers for that, but from the eye test, has made a ton of putts. He returns to that ball striking prowess that we know he has. I mean, this is one of the best ball strikers in PGA Tour history. I expect huge things from Sergio this week. Again, a lot of that came down to the group. He's definitely dealing with one of the weaker groups of anyone in the field, but also a good price tag at $8,300. He's got the match play prowess that we're looking for, and also going to be relatively low owned. So somebody who I'm targeting for a variety of reasons here, but in either circumstance, going to be our bread and butter play, and somebody I'm likely going to be owning in 40, maybe even 50% of my lineups this week. Something to consider is that, of course, this is a smaller field. This also is going to lead to more chalk because there are some slam dunk plays. So guys like Sergio might be 20-25% owned. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing your exposure levels. Might have to be a little bit more aggressive this week than you are in the past. Moving on to our next pick, it's going to be Taylor Gooch at $7,700. He's also somebody I mentioned before that's dealing with a weak group at his 38.1% win rate on somebody like a Taylor Gooch. So we go ahead and organize this by group to show you an idea of just how weak it is. You can see he's dealing with Bryson DeChambeau, who of course is injured. I don't even know if he's going to end up teeing it up this week. Could very well withdraw here before Wednesday morning. But you have him, Taylor, Lee Westwood, who of course is a shell of his former self, and Richard Bland coming over from the European Tour. So by far the weakest lower two of any group that I've seen here. And Bryson DeChambeau, you could argue, is the weakest number one seed because of the injury, right? He hasn't played for quite some time, dealing with the back and wrist injuries, both of the worst injuries that you can deal with for a golfer. He's only 2-4 for his match play record. Taylor Gooch, of course, 0-3, so not that much better. But Lee Westwood, not that impressive at 5-6-1. He's never really been known as a match play stalwart. And Richard Bland never played before. So in general, if anybody's going to break out of this group that has no proven winners in it, maybe it's Taylor Gooch, somebody that's got that fiery personality. Of course, we've seen that on the course before. The guy definitely has that competitive fire to him. He's also coming in with some of the best form. I mean, you've seen that ball striking over the last 50 measured rounds. For somebody like Taylor Gooch, you can see he's gaining nearly 7/10 of a stroke per round on approach. The off the tee play is never insane, but he gets it out there in the fairway, and that's really what you're looking to do here at Austin Country Club, especially more so than most golf courses. He's solid around the green. He gains with the putter. Essentially doesn't have a hole in his game. And this golf course is only 7,100 yards. So it's not like you have to be a bomber to take advantage of it. And the fact that he's in Brayson's group does give him a huge advantage in my book. So somebody who, again, last year didn't do all that great, ended up going 0-3. But I'll give him a pass for that, especially given the advantage that he has in Group 9. All right, and now for our value pick, we're going to be going with Kevin Kisner. He's over there at $7,600, so relatively cheap, but I think he should be priced much higher given his skill set at this golf course. You can see he's 16-6-1, just absolutely ridiculous stuff here. He has a win here, a second place finish, a few other top 10s as well. Pretty much every time this guy shows up to the match play, he makes it through his group, and he usually makes a run at that championship as well, and it makes perfect sense. This guy's a fiery competitor. He checks the mental box. He's one of the best putters on tour. That's our number one key stat for the week. And what else does he do well? He's a great approach player. So he does everything that we're looking for. So it makes sense from the eye test, makes sense from the numbers perspective. In terms of country club fit, he's number 17 in the field, which out of 64 players, that's pretty damn solid. Number 21 for total model ranking. And in general, I have him winning his group 31.8% of the time. So not a lock by any means. Go ahead and take a look at who he will be competing against. He's in JT's groups, which isn't ideal, right? He's, of course, coming in with some of the greatest form in the field. But JT is 8-10-1 in his career, in match play, which he has this reputation for being an insane match player, which at one Ryder Cup, he did go 3-0-0, or maybe it was like 3-0-1 or 3-0-2 or something like that. I know he went undefeated, but aside from that, you can see he hasn't had the best record. 8-10-1's a losing record the last time I checked. So Kevin Kisner, the more proven veteran, he's much cheaper, and you're going to see a ton of upsets this week. You got to pick your spots when it comes to that kind of thing. You can't take all the favorites because you're going to see at least half of them, if not more of them, end up losing this week and not getting out of their group. Mark Leishman also not coming in with the greatest form. Luke List kind of fell apart after the wind. He doesn't have the putting that I'm looking for. So it's really down to Kevin Kisner and JT for me. And given the prowess, given the fact that this is DFS, it comes down to value, also opportunity cost when it comes to ownership. JT is going to be super chalky. Kisner also probably going to be relatively chalky, but he's also a value play rather than one of those guys up top. So if I can differentiate up top, take the proven commodity here, that's exactly what I'm going to go ahead and do. All right, guys, and now lastly, our flyer pick down low is going to be Tom Hoge coming out of group number 12. I really like his chances for an upset, and at $6,800 would obviously be giving us quite a good amount of value. But go ahead and take a look at the group that he's playing in. Sort this over here by group number. You'll see that he's playing in one of the weaker groups in the field. You have Thomas Peters playing there, who hasn't been all that good in match play over the years. You have, of course, Tom Hoge making his first start. Same thing with Min Woo Lee. And the quote-unquote stud in the group is Billy Horschel. And if you're going to pick at any of the guys up top, of course, Billy Horschel has the least pedigree of any of them. You have many of the top 5, top 10 of the official World Golf Rankings. And though Billy Horschel is defending champion, has an excellent match play record to this point of his career. We were on him last year. Tom Hoge, even as a newcomer, is more than live to go and take him down. I mean, as of right now, I only have him doing it 30% of the time, but Billy Horschel only has a 36.7% chance of winning, and Billy Horschel's very likely to be one among the most chalky plays on the entire slate, whereas Tom Hoge, at a reasonable price, again, he's $2,000 cheaper, also could come in maybe at a third or even at least half the ownership of somebody like a Billy Ho. So I like him in a game theory perspective, especially for some of these large field tournaments, and you're going to have to take a shot on one of these guys down low. And every single year at this event, you see one of these guys make a run to the top. And I know that Hoge doesn't have all that much history, but you can tell he's a fiery competitor. The guy is very invested in every shot he's making, and overall, seems like the type of guy that would relish a chance to take on his competitors. It's a short golf course that plays right into Tom Hoge's game. He's an approach player that can do it with precision and can get hot with the putter from time to time. And in a match play, that is exactly what we're looking for. So again, if you're looking for somebody with a proven track record, he's certainly not the guy there. But if you're looking for somebody that has the approach play, he's reasonably priced, and he has a group, maybe most importantly, he has a group that he's actually should be able to take advantage of, and Tom Hoge's going to be your guy this week. That's all I've got for this week's picks. Before we go on to get out of here, let me know down in the comments who you got winning this thing, whether it's somebody on my board, somebody I mentioned, or completely off my radar. But I'd love to hear if you guys have taken this thing down. For me personally, I think Patrick Cantlay's got a real good shot at doing so, but if I got to take somebody down low, why not Tom Hoge, or why not somebody like Kevin Kisner for the second time around? I think all of them are very live, but go ahead and let me know your thoughts down below. And as always, going to have a full plethora of golf content to come, whether it's our value picks a little bit later on, our fades and sleepers. Our weekly DFS live stream will be tomorrow at 7 p.m. So rather than Wednesday, because of the lock early Wednesday morning, and of course our showdown and prize picks content to come. We probably won't have showdown content because of the format of this event, but look forward to some prize pick stuff if they'll be dropping those lines, and potentially some Corrales Putakanya content to come on Wednesday. If I got the time for it, I'm going to fire away at it. I'm definitely going to have some type of projections for those of you in the Patreon, so make sure you're part of that if you haven't already, and see you guys later on in the week. Best of luck.